Hey, Nick, welcome to the show. You have a very interesting career at the intersection of UX design and cutting edge technologies. And you've really, I've really been impressed by the work that you and your team have been doing at brain.ai. So I'd love to start by diving into the high level vision of brain.ai. Can you paint a picture for us of what the future looks like if you succeed? And what personally gets you excited about this mission?
Our goal was to create a more human friendly way of interaction with the technology. So, right now, a lot of people struggle with the technology because the way computers are built, they are built with the same paradigm that was initially established like in the 80s. The idea of
Hmm.
the icons, the apps, and the idea of the windows where you can interact with different content and functionality. But in Brain, we see is as a is not really proper way of creating the interaction between computer and human. So our ideas was to make the interaction more natural. That's why the app that we've created is called Natural AI. It's a way of making interaction seamless and effortless. So the idea is that you don't need a lot of apps, a lot of different windows. The app, I mean the engine that is help you with your tasks, understands your intention, and provides you with exactly what you want to have or see in that specific moment.
Mm. And one of the things I'm kind of very curious about, especially in this new era that we're getting into, and this new era I'm talking about is like generated interfaces. I'm curious about how challenging designing for this type of interface is. Can you walk us through some of the unique challenges that you've encountered?
Yeah, absolutely. The idea is, I mean, the principles are the same. You need to understand what users want to achieve at a specific moment of time. So the challenge is to understand the mental model of the user and
Mm.
provide an interface that solves exactly the problem that they have at this particular moment. So it's not exactly like a AI generated interface because AI is the engine that is powered our interaction, but the interface is called morphing interface because it morphs, it naturally reacts to user input, which might be the query that you provide, I mean the prompt, or
Mm.
your prompt that you provide as a voice command. So it's basically the AI engine understands the intention and provides the interface that solves the user problem. And the main challenge is to clearly understand what users want to achieve at a specific moment of time.
Mm. Yeah, when you're creating these interfaces, these dynamic interfaces or the morphing interfaces, as you say,
Mhm.
how do you approach the design process? And since it's a very like not modular, like I'm very curious, like how do you approach this process?
You're absolutely right that it's sort of a module, but it's not exactly module in a way that you think as an app. I mean, general app, because imagine that you have a lot of different apps on your mobile phone, and now all the apps are integrated inside the one app. And all apps might be different. For example, the ride sharing app is quite different from the food ordering app, or language translator. The goal is to create modules that will be consistent, and at the same time they will be different enough to help the user accomplish different goals. So it's still kind of a modular system, but the modules might be like large modules and the small modules, depending on the way we want to approach the tasks. For example, we have some intersections for different scenarios. Like, for example, food ordering will be similar with uh, scenarios like travel planning, for example, because you still have to show the cards with the different options and you should provide the options to filter, to narrow down the list of options. So you have the different components which will be relevant to both scenarios. But for example, scenario when you want to schedule something, like schedule some event, and you ask the app to help you with that, will be different with this scenario. So you will need a different set of the components. And yeah, the our initially we like to have the user solve typical problems. So when we start to design the app, we will figure out the set of the tasks that the core part of our users want to accomplish, and then we structure this set, prioritize what is the most important task for them, and important from both user side and the business side, because we want our app commercially successful. That's why we prioritize also the business tasks, such as, for example, travel planner, food ordering, etc. So and
Mm.
then we define the set of components that help us to achieve that.
I'm also like very interested to hear your thoughts on the role of designers in like this constantly evolving world. Like, how do you see the designer's job evolving as interfaces become more generated and more automated?
Well, I think it's like we are stepping into the design driven world where everything will be designed, but not necessarily by humans. I mean, when we see design process right now that we have, it's more like you brainstorm something, then you turn your idea into tangible wireframe or prototype, and then you turn this prototype into the final design. But the way we will design the products in the future will be different, because the systems like AI tools will help us to streamline this process and go from idea to the final implementation in no time. I mean, not like tomorrow, but in this decade, I think. And this will change the way we will think about the products and the way we think about the product design process. It still will be like linear, but a lot of work will be done by AI. The goal of a designer will be the same. I mean, create user focused, commercially successful product, but the speed at which we will be able to create the design will be very different. We will be able to like go from the initial idea to implementation and less time that we have it right now. And the way you articulate problem, the way you articulate what you want to see will be critical, because the faster and the more relevant you will provide the query and then the prompt, the less time you will have to iterate and to find the right solution for your problem, because AI will be able to understand what you want to create and like create it for you.
Well, let's talk about flexibility. How do you create design systems that can adapt to a wide range of user prompts? And what are some of the key principles that you follow?
Wow, that's an interesting question, because all products are different. And in our case, for example, when we design Natural, our ideas was to figure out the core set of tasks that the user wants to accomplish, then figure out the direction where we want to have in our app. So first of all, we've defined the strategy, then we'll define the plan of action according to the user needs and business goals, and then we've defined what we think we'll need to include in design system. So on the bottom level, like a foundational level for our design system, what design principles, what we want to have, what we want to accomplish, and why. And then, based on the principles, we started to define the different elements such as components and styles. Without the design principles, it's impossible to create a solid design system, because it won't be well structured, and it won't be scalable, and we will likely need to invest time to rework it in the future. So I believe that the most important thing is to like define the business strategy first, then define the core set of principles that you want to accomplish in your design to make, I mean, the process design driven, and then build atoms and molecules all based on the principles such as styles and components. Because I mean, the idea of component is good, and I think it's a really great idea, but without solid principles, this is just the element of design system. And yeah, it might fall shortly, because it won't be scalable, for example, or it won't work for when your system will scale and change, and you will need to adapt to the changing marketing conditions, and things like that. So that's how I think we'll need to design this high system.
Mm. It also like I saw that you mentioned like atoms and molecules a while ago. Do you follow the atomic design process?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the only way I think to design a design system that will be adaptable to changes, and a design system that will be flexible enough to help you design for the different platforms and the different mediums, such as, for example, for uh, desktop and for mobile device.
Mm. Awesome. Also, I can imagine like consistency can be like a huge challenge as well when designing morphing interfaces. Like how do you maintain a coherent experience across the board with like these somewhat dynamically created screens? But like yes, how do you maintain the consistency across the board?
Um, well, we've designed, basically, we followed the same approach that we've designed other products. So it's a human centered way of creating products. So we started with the scenario of interactions, figure out popular scenarios of interactions, defined them as a list. And then, based on this scenario of interactions, we started to figure out what components we will need for each scenario of interaction. Then we will start to create a Venn diagrams and figure out where we have intersections between the scenarios. So where we can reuse the components without creating new components, because uh, without that, our system will start to grow really fast. Because if we will need to create new different set of components for each scenario, it will be overwhelming. So we started to figure out how to reduce different components in different scenarios, and what styles we will need to change and why. So the challenge for us was, for example, we started to work on web application. It was quite challenging because not all components that work well for touch-based interface work for regular interactions. I mean, desktop interactions, and we had to adopt actually both components, change slightly the component for the mobile device, and align it with the web platforms to find nice intersection between platforms. But it's like it's I would say edge cases. Most of the time we were able to adopt the components really nice.
Mm. Let's talk design systems and tools. Like, what kind of design tools and prototyping methods were best for designing interfaces that morph? And are there any specific tools that you found like particularly helpful, or is it like the same tool set that pretty much every like UX designer uses?
I would say that we will use the same tools, but we will use slightly different techniques to understand how the users will want to interact with the interfaces. For example, at the early stages of our design process, we use the wizard of Oz design process. I mean, the approach, which is not creating the interface, but rather than emulating the interface. So you have like when you use the wizard of Oz, you have the actual user who interact with the application, but the user doesn't know that they interacting with the application that was simulated by actual human being who is a wizard. And we, based on that interaction, we figure out how the users want to interact with the app to make it more natural. And after that, we've started to collect this information, analyze that, and create various design components and patterns that helps create a more human-friendly interaction. And the components and patterns were created in tools like Figma and Sketch. But the point is, we did a lot of iterations at the early stages of design process to figure out what is the best way to design product. I mean, and make it more human friendly.
Mm. And building on that, like, how do you communicate these designs to developers? Is it like the same way, or are there any special considerations for the design handoff process?
Well, handoff was it actually required a lot of communication at the early stages when for example, new person comes to the team, and we need to like dive into details to explain how things should be built in the first place. But after the team figure out, I mean, after we will, it was a problem during the early stages of company. But now, when the company grew and became solid, I mean, the design process didn't require a lot of explanation because the team was able to understand what we want to accomplish simply because they have experience. So I would say that when you start a process from scratch and you establish new teams, you need to communicate and collaborate with the designers and developers all the time. So ideally, both designers and developers should be on in the same physical space to be able to communicate with each other, because the best way to approach design problem, both from the design side and from the engineering side, is then when the both engineering team and design team constantly collaborate, communicate, and there is no boundaries between them. So I mean, you don't have any boundaries like the distance or something like that. You share the same space, and you can just approach the other person's desk and just start to discuss design you want to implement.
All right, let's dive into user testing. How do you validate whether these interfaces are meeting user needs and expectations, and what metrics, or if you can like dive into that, or like give a high level summary of like the things that you track to make sure you're staying on track with meeting user needs.
We actually had a set of metrics for business needs and for users needs. And for the user needs, we focused on the time on task, how much time it would take for user to complete some specific task that they have in mind, and error rate, which is a number of errors that they face along the interaction. And we also had a metrics that track the session length, which was important for the first time users. For example, first time user will try to figure out whether this is valuable or not for them. I mean, the app, and we track the session time to figure out how much time they spent learning about the different options that the app offers and playing with them. But for the regular users, for the retaining users, we measure the time on tasks, retention rate, error rate, to figure out whether it's something the experience that we offer is good enough for them. And from the business point of view, we measure conversion rate and bounce rate. Those are like core set of metrics as far as I remember. So
Mm.
yeah, and for the testing, yeah, we did a lot of testing during the prototyping phase, because I understand that it's a completely different story might be completely different story for the first time users, and we had to be sure that the design that we created worked not only for us but also for people who will use it, not regular users. I mean, not people who was involved in design process, and we solved this problem by inviting people in testing.
Mm. Have you noticed any like surprising user behaviors when interacting with these dynamic interfaces, and any interesting insights from your user research?
Well, a lot of people were surprised by the fact that they can interact with this, and the interface is designed to accommodate different needs. So most of the time, people expect the app to solve one specific problem. For example, when you open Uber, you want to just order a ride share. But here is a completely different story. You can do almost anything using the app, and it was quite surprising for many people. Another thing that we noticed that was really interesting is that a lot of people still love beautiful things. I mean, since we
Mm.
live in an era that is, I would say, purely functional design, because the previous era, the previous decade, like 2010s, was about the creating really beautiful interfaces, something magical, delightful interactions. Right now, a lot of apps doesn't have something like that, and they're like purely functional, which is good, actually. But still, people love well crafted design. They appreciate it, and a lot of people who was testing our app at the early days of development was really surprised and delighted by the fine crafted animation effects and nicely designed transitions, and um, it just something that they like.
Yeah, man. I have to say, like using the application is like what the onboarding process is one of like the cleanest and the most smooth process I've actually seen in an app in a long time. It's like it's borderline magical. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it comes on to like collaborating, designing these experiences obviously require like a lot of collaboration with like probably like data scientists and obviously like engineers and everything like that, right? So how do you foster an effective cross-functional team or cross-functional collaboration? And like for companies looking to really understand like how to improve their process around this, what tips do you have for designers working with like AI teams?
I think that the main idea is to like establish common ground. I would say so. Everyone on the team should understand the goal that we want to, that we have, and the task that we want to accomplish with the product we are building. So without that, it's impossible to like establish good collaboration, because without a clear vision and clear strategy and plan of action, people will won't be able to like collaborate effectively, simply because they don't understand what we want to build and why. So I believe that the first thing that we need to set in stone is what we want to build, why and when. And after that, I believe that it's important to keep everyone in the team in a loop, so they should be able to collaborate with each other early on in design process. The worst thing you can do is like to separate team and build design in silo, and then ship it to the engineering team as a handoff activity, and I expect them to build it, because it won't work. There is a nice process that actually I believe Dan Moore suggested. It's called hot potato process, which is basically the idea of having handoff activities, not handoff process, but a handoff activities all along the design process. So when you're building something, you constantly keep the engineering team, NLP team, data scientists, and everyone who is involved in design process, including marketing team, so they can collaborate on the ideas that you have. Because without that, I believe that actually the engineering part of things, something that you will build or can build or cannot build, is not like the critical aspect of creating product. What is more important is creating something that brings value to the users. So I believe that working with the data scientists and the sales and marketing team to figure out what we want to build and why and how we want to sell it is extremely important. Otherwise, it will be like the concept that might not provide any value to users.
Mm. And looking ahead, like the future vision of like this industry, how do you see or how do you envision the future of like interface design or UX design as AI becomes more prevalent? Will we still need human designers, or like will AI completely take over?
It definitely will take over some jobs, like someone who don't want to invest in education, learning new things, such as, for example, someone who prefer um, to like stay in the current state of the market. But I don't think that AI will drastically change the way we design products, because not the way we design products, but the whole idea of product design. Because we still need to create human-centered products. We still need to make design solve the business goals and provide a great experience, because it also has a direct impact on business bottom line. But the jobs that we have right now, they likely will evolve. So we might won't have a person who is called like UX designer, but we will likely have the person who will be like user experience engineer with strong skills and prompt engineering, something like that. I mean, the person
Mm.
who will be able to use AI tools effectively to solve the design problems and business problems. So some jobs will die, but no new jobs will arise, and the titles will change, all because the AI will influence this. It will be like natural transition, I would say.
Yes, and this also like raises like interesting ethical questions as well. Like as AI plays a bigger role in shaping user experiences. How can we ensure that, like everything is kind of like geared towards like the user's best interest, and what kind of oversight or transparency is needed in this overall in this process?
Well, the idea is we still the AI tools doesn't replace they don't replace people. They like help us to solve our problems faster. So the idea is like having the user to decide what we want to ship, I mean, build and why. So we use the tools to speed up our design process, but people should be in charge of what we want to release and when we want to release it and why. So the problem of ethics is all about people and how we want to use the tools, because tools are just the tools, and people use these tools to, you can use, for example, hammer to build a house, but you can use the hammer to hurt another person, and it's up to the person to decide how they want to use the tools. So I think that the whole discussion about the ethics is all about, again, how people want to use these tools.
And what advice would you give to designers who are intrigued by this space and want to start experimenting with AI driven design? Where did they start? Well, at first, I think they should actually start by using your product first, but like on a like wider note, like where would they start?
I think that there are a lot of places to start, like things we have specific tools that design UI for you. And we also have a set of tools that generate images, and the tools like ChatGPT or Claude AI, which is like chat based in tools that also can help you with some tasks such as user research. So I would say that the best way to approach this is to start using AI tools and not just try them, but to bake them in your design process. So and see how the tools work for you, and what task you want to accomplish using AI tools and what task you want to accomplish using the traditional tools. And then find the intersection, because a lot of tools that designers use right now, like tools like Figma, they also start to move to direction where you have a lot of plugins that allows you to try AI, and plugins like generate a microcopy for your UI, or create layouts based on your prompt, and do accessibility analysis, for example, for your design. All these tools are available inside of the platform as plugins. So you don't have to like switch to another platforms. You can still use Figma, but try the plugins that the Figma uh, allows you to try and figure out what works best for you. So, and do it on a regular basis. So I believe that the consistency in the way you use the tools will help you figure out what works best for your design process and how you get benefit from using the tools.
Mm. So, Nick, this is my last question here. I ask everyone who comes on the show, and this question is: what's one weakness that you've turned into your strength?
One weakness. That's a good question. My weakness is I spend a lot of time learning about people, and it might be a lot of time that I take from the actual design process to just chat with people who use the product. And I use it as a, and sometimes it delays the part where I have to create the actual design. But it also, I believe, one of the great thing about that, because when I start to create actual design, I do it much faster because I understand what I want to build. So this is the weakness, because without clear understanding what I want to build, I cannot build products. I'm just not like the person who can design something without knowing what I want to build in the first place. But at the same time, I think it's my strong side.
I love that, Nick. Thank you so much for joining us on the Same Logic podcast.
Thanks for inviting
Um,
me.
I I really loved chatting with you about this exciting industry, and I can't wait to share this conversation with our audience.
Thank you.